Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 478 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is bet on yourself. Our quote of the day comes to us from Pete Wentz. Always bet on yourself, no matter what the odds are. It means more to be in the race than to watch the victory laps from the stands. For those of you that have supported our Clear Planner, we have some exciting news as we are launching our Clear Planner newsletter. We've been talking about this idea for a while, but we are excited to announce that we are finally launching our Clear Planner newsletter this month in March of 2024. If you would like to subscribe, find out more about our planner, or maybe even grab one for yourself or someone else, you can do that by heading on over to theclearplanner.com. Once again, that website is theclearplanner.com. Thank you. I truly enjoyed speaking with today's guest. Not only is Kate McCauley an impressive woman, but she bet on herself and she hasn't looked back since. I know you will enjoy today's episode. Kate, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
Appreciate it. And we were talking offline. So many of my guests have come via not this 6 degrees of separation, but this 1 degree of separation. And I always talk about this on the show, but I always encourage my listeners out there that in today's day and age with technology, it's so much easier to connect with others. And I don't mean in any way that you can become best friends with Michael Jordan or something like that, but especially professionally, there are so many ways to connect. And we were introduced by a gentleman named Dan Rigby that we both know. Initial connection came via LinkedIn from Dan and I. So wanted to just give Dan a shout out because you would not be here, which leads me to my first question I always ask everybody is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
Yes, I am. I actually start my day off. I have 3 teenagers. So I try to send them out the door in a positive manner. Sometimes we have to reframe and do that. But then, yes, I try to influence at least one person. And I think there's a ripple effect, once I do that goes out into the world. So yes, I am ready.
I have, as of yesterday, I have 2 teenagers, which is scary. I have 2 more years until I get to the 3rd. But I know that the power of that one person perspective. And when I started asking that question, initially I wasn't sure where in that idea of is one person enough, but you hit it perfectly. It's that ripple effect. If you have a positive impact on me, then I'm going to have an interaction with somebody else or maybe 2 or 3 other people. And I know it sounds cliche and small to some people because they always think in big, giant numbers, but I think it's so important to do that. And just dealing with your kids, they're going to interact with teachers, students, classmates, right. and I think it's really powerful. And my next question I ask each guest is your no quit story or a time in your life where you were challenged and you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Right. So I love this. I love the concept of it. I think my no quit story would have to be when I bet on myself finally. And then in doing so, I did need to do some internal work so that I could heal from the trauma experience, which was really related to my professional journey. And I was a teacher, to give you a little bit of background. I was a teacher in the public school system for 20 years outside of Philadelphia. And the district itself and education in general shifted and it became toxic where I was working. It was predominantly violent. That looked like fights, breaking up, arguments back and forth, people telling me to F off, when I'm just asking them to do something that a normal student would do, weapons and criminal activity, things that were happening within the walls of our school and then outside the community creeping in. And I call it a long beginning, betting on myself because it was a journey. I loved being an educator and I was great, but this environment was poisoning myself and some other people. And it started to come out physically. I was, hiding it during the school day. I describe it as being neck deep in chaos, but smiling while I was teaching. And outsiders and some people knew that I was having headaches. I had, panic attacks. I was experiencing a lot of trauma that was coming out of my body. No matter what I did, I could not keep it in. The only thing that would come out in the building was this eye tick that I would blame on my three kids, saying, "Oh, I'm so stressed. I have three kids." I was making excuses. So then the pandemic rolls in. We're getting closer to that 20-year mark of me being the teacher. Long story short, my district was a hot mess and they did not do paperwork correctly for the state testing. I had created my company during the beginning of the pandemic and it was a side hustle. They made some decisions and then changed their mind, told us we had to come in as teachers just to sit in the building, continue virtually. We were actually there the entire following year virtually, which was a disservice. That's another story. But anyway, they said we had to come in a loophole. If the kids show up to do the state testing, if they don't, we can say we tried, then we can go back home. I had made decisions for my three children. My youngest has a uniquely beautiful brain, and he was a rare unicorn thriving in COVID at home, probably because I was here. I was also not experiencing those stress effects that were coming out. So I told my district, no, I can't come in. I'll teach from home. The kids are still going to be at home, aren't my students. I want to teach them. I've built a rapport, all the good stuff. They told me, no, if we let you, we let everyone else. So I bet on myself and I resigned. I stepped fully into my company. It was terrifying, but then I had to do that internal work and I still do it. I think I will probably always do that because there was a lot of trauma that I experienced and the sadness of leaving because I loved being in that school system situation.
I appreciate you touching on that, and not to downplay the internal work of what you were doing, but I think we all should do that internal work at different points and for different reasons in our life, whether that's personally and or professionally. And I think that so many people that I've had the opportunity to connect with or level up with or be mentored by have done some of that and continue to do that internal work. Shifting gears for a second, I wanted to just ask a follow-up. If you could just briefly tell our listeners what that side hustle that now has become your main gig is, in case they would want to find out more about that.
Sure. Thank you. So I get to love people in a lot of different ways. I coach people on shifting their mindset. And I only coach women. It ranges from 16-year-olds all the way through adulthood. Some of them, are trying to make changes in their life. Some of them are trying to up level in their business. And we set goals and I guide them through. I call them I'm the guide on the side. They're doing the work. I'm keeping them accountable. And in addition to that, I get to love people through workshops and speaking engagements where I do that virtually and in person, where I go in and speak on different topics. Because of that teacher background, I do make it unique for each organization I get to love, but it is all based on mindset and retraining our brain and how we can show up successfully as the happiest, healthiest version of ourselves.
I told you I was going to ask, and you put a perfect segue into the concept of one of my favorite topics, which is mindset and retraining the brain, as you call it. Wanted to ask if you could just touch on that, because I think it is such a fascinating concept, and it's something that I'm seeing not only in my own clients, both in high school, college, but professionally, but just in general. I think there's that idea that we can change our brain. We can learn new things, where I think a lot of the old thought behind it was, this is who I am. Maybe I can tweak it a teeny bit, but this is the way I've always been, as opposed to really being able to completely learn and relearn how to work our brain and our mindset.
Right. So I'm obsessed with the brain for a lot of different reasons. I have retrained my own brain to become successful in my business. And I've done it for my son. He has a uniquely beautiful brain. He's dyslexic, auditory processing, ADHD. The kid has done things where educators are like, what is this craziness that is happening? So really what I talk about is the reticular activating system. And this is the size of a pencil. It goes up the back of your brain stem. You're using it all of the time. You don't even realize it. And the way I like to describe it is what we focus on becomes our reality. So when you are focusing on something, like you had just said, this is how I am. I always show up late, or I'm a mess. I can never be organized. Your brain will actually look for signs, opportunities to say, you are right. You are a mess. And what else can happen bad, and then you will see those and you will just do that thing. Same as when you start to say, I am successful. I can do this. I am a speaker. I am a beast on the football field. Whatever it is that you're trying to change, it takes time. It's not a magic pill. But when you are putting those thoughts into your brain, again, your brain will look for ways to prove that you are right. And if you can experience it in your body and feeling it through meditation, affirmations, different tools that you can easily implement into your life, your brain literally doesn't know the difference between reality and what you're feeding it. So when you're experiencing that, then it starts to say, oh, okay, let me find something that makes this true. And here's an opportunity for you to go do that thing, or, practice that skill that you want to become the better athlete, or, go do the speaking engagement, whatever it is. And again, it's an ongoing process. Like you were talking about, we're always doing that internal work. This is something that make a habit in your life. So, and another example, and then I'll get off of this topic. We'll talk about something else. That if you don't believe me, I want you to think about last time you bought a car. And I always give an example of a Jeep. If you see a Jeep out on the road, you're looking for Jeeps, you'll start seeing Jeeps everywhere. Those Jeeps were there. They were in your neighborhood when you were taking a walk. Those commercials were on the radio. Your brain is focusing on that now. And then you'll start to look up things. Which dealership has it? I'm going to go test drive it. That is the reticular activating system at work. So it is happening for you all of the time. You just need to tap into it if you want to change your life.
We release over audio and we're on video, but even before you started the last part of that answer, I wrote that piece down is our brain doesn't know what's real from fiction. Our brain doesn't know, if using an athlete as an example, if you are a fantastic or the starting point guard from, okay, I'm not on the team or I'm sitting on the bench. You can literally put in any example you want. But I think what you touched on is really important, because I'm a big believer in affirmations. We all talk about a lot is confidence statements, where I think that's this fictitious of the concept where I think the movie and the book, The Secret, fell a little bit short is affirmations and saying these different things. Okay, I'm great. I'm successful. I can do it. I'm visualizing holding that steering wheel in my hands of that new Jeep, like you said. But then the next piece is you have to follow it up with action. It's not just sitting there saying, okay, I'm driving my dream car, and then you crawl under the covers and take a 4-hour nap. It's, I'm driving my dream car. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. This is the color. This is the year. This is the model. And then it's, okay, how am I going to do it? And I love that you touched on the car example, because as you said it, I was smiling, because it's not like you say something like that and then all of a sudden all your neighbors get the exact same car you wanted, or people at your school or place of work. It's always been there. You just weren't paying attention to it because it wasn't something that was important to you at the time. Wanted to ask if we could go back for a second, just if you could maybe touch a little bit on the concept, if someone's listening to this and they're having a tough time retraining their brain, or maybe shifting their mindset a little bit. Do you have an exercise or a recommendation that you use with some of your clients that maybe some of our listeners can begin that process if they've been wanting or thinking about doing it?
Sure. I love giving tools. So one, I think that it is important to realize that accountability, someone to help guide you and get you there, will make this process go a little bit quicker for you, because it is really easy for your brain to go back to that familiar, and it's keeping you safe. There's a lot of research behind that. But if you want to start a tool on your own, stack a habit. Let's say you want to do those affirmations, since we were chatting about that. I have affirmations I use every day, so I'll give my example. One of mine is, I am the missing piece to every opportunity that presents itself to me. And that can mean so many different things with connections, landing the gig, whatever it might be. Now, when I'm saying these things, to put this habit in place so that I'm saying it, I stack it with another habit. So I'm using, again, the power of my brain. I brush my teeth every day. I check my email every day. I want your listeners right now to think of something that they do every day and stack this new habit. If it's an affirmation, or if it's I drop my kids off, then I go to the gym, whatever it is that they want to put into their life to improve, stack it. And then your brain will start to say, this is what you do now. You know what? You brush your teeth, then you say your affirmations looking in the mirror. So use that brain power and stack a habit.
You touched on, I think, two of my absolute favorite topics, which are habit stacking and accountability. I always joke around saying that I'm the accountability coach. We have the hashtags everywhere, but I think it's so important because, and I appreciate you sharing that, what you do, because to me, it leads into something that I'm a big believer in, which is momentum. And I think people kind of sometimes look at it only from the negative momentum, going to sports or sales. Oh, we didn't get the sale. We lost a game. Now it's 2 games in a row. Or, we missed the last 3 sales opportunities. But its momentum can be positive or negative. And when it comes to habit stacking and accountability, one of the things I always talk about with my clients is get that first win. Doesn't need to be that NBA championship, but get that first win, right? Then get the second win or the first win on the road, first home win. Doesn't seem like it's something huge, but getting that first win and something simple as, okay, I've been talking about going to the gym. You know what? I drop my kids off every day at 7:45. I would rather go earlier, but I can't. So I'm going to then go Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7:50 in the morning. And you are now habit stacking with, okay, I have to drive my kids to school. So I'm doing this act. And now I take a left instead of a right, and I'm going to go to the gym. And then that Monday, successful turns into a successful Wednesday, turns into a successful Friday. And now you have momentum of doing it 3 days in that week when you've been talking about doing it for the last 10 weeks and haven't done it at all. Now you have 3 wins under your belt, which leads me to something I wanted to ask you, the idea of consistency versus perfection. Would love to just have your 2 cents on that idea.
Sure. So I think you nailed it. You'll start to say, all right, this is what I do now. It just becomes part of your life and habit. And I think the consistency and perfection here, I think it is important to be gentle with yourself. Because let's say something happens and you don't say the affirmation, you don't go to the gym, you miss some, or you don't go in the morning. Know that I have so many clients that say like, oh, well, this is what I do. I give up, I try something and I don't stick with it. I can't do this. They fall back into those old patterns. So I think it's important, one, to be gentle. Life is going to life, and go again. I'm from Philly, so there's a little tough love when I get to coach people. Someone who will keep you accountable and say, this is what you said you were going to do. We have it laid out so it's measurable. Did you do the thing? Okay, what happened? What could you do differently, to stay consistent? It doesn't have to be set in stone that we do this. Maybe something else would work better. And then along those lines, let's celebrate what you have been doing. So many people like to focus on what we're not getting done as opposed to all of the good things that you are doing or you have put in place, because then it's easier to say, I can do this. Look at what I have done. So I think a couple things there.
I could not agree more. And when you talk about celebrating and also tough love, I think there's that fine line in the middle where, to me, it's taking ownership of the good, bad, and different. And what I mean by that is I think we're in this place where it's all or nothing, whether you have a coach, a mentor, a manager, and it's only looking at everything you've done right or only looking at everything you've done wrong. And I think the most successful people that I've looked up to in both my personal and professional life, those are the ones that take ownership of everything, the good, the bad, the super ugly, the average. And they say, okay, how do I replicate or duplicate the really good? How do we do more of that? How do we eliminate or do less of the really poor or the days we've fallen short? But then along the lines, let's celebrate those small victories. It goes back to my momentum piece where, again, it's not all or nothing. It's not 0 or 100. There's so much between 0 and 100, all or nothing. And I think sometimes you need that accountability. You need that tough love. You also need a day or a morning or an afternoon where you're struggling and you need someone to say, hey, take 20 minutes, take 30 minutes, like let's regroup.
Yeah.
And an exercise I use, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, is we have a bunch of different reset techniques we use with our high school and college athletes. And I'm writing a 4th book now. And one of the things I was talking about or writing about yesterday is one of the college soccer goalies that I've had a chance to work with. When he gets scored on, the ball is immediately either taken out of the net by himself or a referee or maybe a teammate of his. So that's not his reset per se, because sometimes he doesn't do it. What he does is he velcros his gloves, takes them off really quickly, puts them both back on, re-velcros, and that's his reset button. It doesn't take away the goal. He's not saying it didn't happen, the score is wrong. He's saying it did happen. I'm now taking off that goal and I'm putting on these gloves again. In his mind, this is my reset. These are new gloves. I'm going to make the save for the next time the ball comes to me. So I wanted to ask you, a little bit long-winded, but do you have or do you use any reset techniques with any of or your clients?
Of course, I use them with myself. I make my kids use them. Everyone uses them in my life. And, before I give you an example of some of them that we use, I love the soccer example. When we were talking prior to that, and really the soccer player as well, and the techniques that I'm about to share, I look at failure as research, and sometimes people say, like, what? Like, and I don't love failure. Of course, I want to be successful and do well. I want to win. I'm competitive. But if we look at failure as research, when you're taking those gloves off, when you're, going to restart, how can we learn from this? How can we fix it? It really shifts your mindset instead of focusing on, like, I am terrible, I failed. Let's look at that as research. So when I ask a client, myself or my kids, whoever in my life, to do that reset, a lot of things we can do. A simple breathing technique, I call it the pause. And I actually teach some breath work in some of my workshops too. So, inhaling through your nose and out through your mouth, focusing on bringing that breath in, inhaling, and letting go of what just happened. A simple countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like the Mel Robbins technique, things like that, that can reset in the moment. I also think that it's important that you can do this at any point. I tell my clients, like, there's going to be stressful days and meetings that you didn't anticipate. You can restart your day whenever you want. You have to remember that you're in control. So simply saying, I'm going to restart the day, and going into what I call the pause, and sometimes that might be a little longer. I need to go to the bathroom, take a walk from that meeting, start that day and think, okay, I can either let this spiral out of control or I can start over. So I think there's a lot of different tools that I love to give with that, but I think the easiest one I call the pause, where we're just breathing in, breathing out, and literally telling ourselves. You don't have to announce it to everyone, but you can if you want. But
I love that you shared that, and I appreciate your answer, which is, I assumed you had a couple different techniques, which is why I asked it, because one of the things that I've found, going back to all or nothing, I think there's a lot of false information out there in the sense of this is the only way you can meditate, or this is the only way to do breath work, or this is the way you have to utilize your affirmations. And why I love having different guests on the podcast is because different perspectives. And one of the things I always say especially with the athletes I work with and the coaches, is you might have 15 or 20, or on a baseball team or football team, 50 or 100 plus players on your team. There is nothing that is one size fits all, other than this is the time practice starts and this is the time practice ends. And I jokingly say that because that is probably the only one size fits all, other than, I guess, you have to get on the bus for the game at the same time. But other than that, people in general, we learn things and different things work differently. I love the Mel Robbins perspective of the countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. It's something simple, but maybe to you and me it works amazing, and maybe to two other people it doesn't work at all. So it's not about saying, okay, take this round peg and just jam it through this square hole. It's learn from other people. And I've actually never heard the phrase you use, failure as research. I've heard so many different things. I was actually talking to a client last week, and he was referencing failure as the best education tool, the best teacher. And there's so many different things, but I love that perspective. And what I always say is failure is one of, if not the greatest teachers in life, if you do something with it, right? So I always say that to my clients, because failing stinks. And like you said, you don't ever want to fail. I've never worked with a team or a coach who said, hey, you know what? I really hope we lose every game this year, and I hope it's just a horrific season. But on the flip side of it is, and I always say this early on with teams in the season, I don't like that we lost, and I know you don't, but I do welcome the lesson that potentially can come from this. But it's up to you, the staff, the players, to do something with it, because I'm going to introduce some strategies and talk about it, but it's what are you going to do with that actual research?
So I'm going to add in, because I can't get it out of my brain, when you were just talking about, we think we're supposed to do a certain thing. I often say to my clients, they'll probably like, this is like her line, stop shoulding all over yourself. The shoulds and the supposed tos. Like this person did it this way. This is how this person became successful. I am 100% in agreement that we can learn from other people's experience. It's part of how I do what I do. But you do not have to do it the same exact way, whatever it is you're trying to achieve, especially if you do not like it. Like if you don't like the techniques that we're sharing, you don't have to run to get in shape. There are totally different ways that you can try. It's, that failure research idea that this doesn't work. If not this, something better. So, I think it's important to remember that yes, we can learn from those who have gone before us, and there are techniques that work, research, science behind it, but it doesn't mean that your unique way isn't good for you.
I love that. And to take it one step further, I think sometimes, and I know I'm so guilty of this in the past, we more often than not overcomplicate things. Something simple as breath work or meditation or just slowing down, a pause, a reset. I think sometimes we look at it as there needs to be a 47-minute completely to the T, dot every I, cross every T, where sometimes it's just something simple like that countdown technique from Mel Robbins, or just resetting of taking the gloves on and off. There's no science behind that. When I was talking to that soccer goalie, I didn't give him a 400-page book and say, this is how you take the gloves
Right.
off. It needs to be the right hand and then the left hand, and you need to close your eyes and look up at this. No, it's something very simple and basic,
Hmm.
but then trying different things. I work with a bunch of lacrosse players, and there are typically 4 snaps on the helmets. There's one player that he plays on the defensive end. He just unbuckled the 2 snaps in the front. That was
Right.
his, okay, I'm taking this off, taking the negativity, bad play, and then boom, when he re-snaps them, now he's good to go. And it was
Yeah.
funny, one of the players on the team last year, I could see he was watching him, and he was on the sideline next to me, and he was like, Coach, he's like, what the heck is the player doing? And I explained to him, I said, that's his reset technique. And he was like, oh, okay. And then like a week or 2 later, I saw him practice a couple times resetting it. Ultimately, it didn't work for him. But I told him after the fact, I was like, I was so proud of you that you actually tried it, because you were then putting it into action, and it's figuring out what works for you, as opposed to the same thing has to work for everybody. And if it doesn't,
Right.
then you're looking at your meditation process or your reset process as, I'm a failure because I don't do it the way Kate does it.
Right. Exactly.
Fun question we ask, and I'm actually really interested for your response. I know
Okay.
you are familiar with the famous Jim Rohn quote, you are the average of 5 people you spend the most time with. If I were to grant you dinner tonight with any 5 people, dead or alive, that you could level up with, who would you pick?
All right. So we're eating here in Philly, of course, somewhere good. All right. So I'm going to look at a couple different areas of my life here, I think. First, I'm going to invite Michael Phelps, and I want him to talk to us about how his mom helped him. He has dyslexia and ADHD. So I actually share those stories with my son. He's not a swimmer, but I share a lot of examples to show him how you can overcome this, and it's actually a gift. So I want to learn from him and his champion mindset. I got to invite Kobe. Kobe is from the Philly area, Lower Merion, actually. So I just think we were cut short with Kobe too. And I'm a basketball lover. I coached, my kids play now. So he's coming, of course. Grant Cardone, he is someone that I really only started looking into and reading his books when I started this business, because I needed to learn how to be a business person. So I follow him and, read some of his books. So I want him to help me up level, so I can come in like fierce woman that I am. Let's see, that's 3, 4. Mel Robbins, I mentioned her already. I think she and I align in many ways. I'm just getting started in this journey, but like I said before, I'm kind of watching. Oh, okay, this is an interesting way she's doing this with people. Let me see if anybody in my area needs that. Then the last one is going to be my grandmother, who unfortunately passed early on in the pandemic. And I didn't get to say that official goodbye, but my grandmother was also a teacher, sprinkled love all over us as her grandchildren. And I like to say, I get to love the people I work with. I was like that as a teacher. I'm like that now with my clients, no matter if they're 6-month client or a 1-day workshop. And of course, I'm gonna cheat And I'm going to say that my grandmother always would bring my grandpa, and he brings the best dessert. It's a family tradition. It's whipped cream chocolate cake. So he would have to just come because he's bringing dessert. He counts with my grandma. So technically six.
I like that. And we've had a few people that have added more than five. We've had a couple people that have been under. So, like I said,
Okay.
it's this fictitious dinner. So you can bring anybody you want. If you could go back right now and have a 2-minute conversation with the 20-year-old version of yourself, and just give yourself one piece of advice or one idea or suggestion, what would you share with the 20-year-old version of you?
Oh, goodness. I only have 2 minutes with that wild version of me. All right. Let me say, I think I would probably tell her that you're exactly where you're meant to be. And there's going to be a messy middle, and you need to go through that. You're going to gain a lot of skills. You're not going to like it, but you need to keep going. And I promise, you know, the good is coming, because there was some crazy times during those years. But yeah, I wouldn't tell her to change anything actually, but maybe be slow down a little. But yeah, I think that would be the advice.
It's probably great advice that people that are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s and beyond need to hear, because I think, especially in today's day and age with technology and everything instantaneous. I was just having a meeting prior to this, and a gentleman said something that I'm going to coin and use, but he said, everybody wants Amazon Prime results. And then we're trying to figure out the best analogy. So for you, if you have one, or for any of our listeners, we're looking to have that second piece of that analogy. But I think that is a perfect example, because we can get anything we want, whether it's Amazon, FedEx, UPS, DHL, literally overnight. Some of those places actually do same day delivery depending on where you are. But I
Right.
think we miss that runway perspective of, you can't take someone's runway and completely shorten it. You can shorten it from 5 years to 4 years, 3 years to 2 years, but there's nobody out there that can give you that secret sauce and say, hey, here's how you become an overnight millionaire. Because we've all heard the analogies. I think they're the ones I've heard, anywhere from 5, 10, 15, or 20 years to become an overnight success. And I think it's, that's not real, but it's nice to see other people succeed. But it's impossible to say, okay, I can do what Kate did in 13 minutes. No, it's maybe I can
Right.
do it a little bit less because she's coaching me and mentoring me. But just because she's coaching me and mentoring me, it can't be instantaneous.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, you're not as appreciative. I mean, let me tell you, it's been a journey leaving education and stepping in as, the CEO of my business and, doing all the things. I have a team helping me now, but I don't think I would appreciate the success. I mean, I would, but not, it's different when you're in it and you're going through the journey. I reflect often, journal every day, do meditation. And I think sometimes when we get that instant success, I don't know, you take it for granted in some ways, like you hear the people win the lottery and different things that happen in the mess of their life that it becomes. I think it's different when you have to travel through and grow through it. You appreciate it.
Ed Milet had Andy Frisella on his podcast, I think, within the last couple of weeks, and they were talking about some of those people that become financially successful. It looks like overnight, and I forget whether it was Ed or Andy, but one of them followed up and said, "Yeah, and those people are not going to have that same money or be as successful 2 years from now because they haven't had those failures along the way." And I think you hit it on the head, and you said it. You said it perfectly, because you can't appreciate something, I feel, that just gets handed to you. And I grew up with a lot of friends whose parents and grandparents were successful, and they inherited certain things. And I don't know any of them that have really appreciated that perspective of that hard work. Yes, it's amazing that their families were able to do those things and pass along that success. But I think it's very different when somebody hands you something or somebody passes it along to you, as opposed to when you're actually rolling up your sleeves and putting in the work yourself.
Yeah. That's why my 3 teenagers get mad. I'm like, no, you're going to do this yourself and figure this out. I, of course, could do it for you, but you're going to learn. So,
I'm gonna have to send that part to my 3 kids. Selfish question I have. Big reader, big believer in books, but wanted to ask you if there's anything that you're reading currently or you've read recently that you'd like to possibly recommend to our listeners.
I love reading. I try to read as much as possible. So right now, I am actually getting ready to launch a podcast within the next couple weeks. So I am reading a couple different books, but there's one book. It's called On the Wire. Jessica Abel. I hope I'm getting her name right. So it's set up differently. It was recommended to me. It's actually through like a comic book type thing. It's a full book though, but it is just helping you understand how you can connect a little bit. And being on a podcast as a guest, I have loved it and learned so much. And I just, I'm liking it. And I want to make sure that when I jump in, I'm calling it a podcast party. Can't wait to invite all those VIP guests that I just love. She was in radio, and I just love the concepts behind it of getting to know people's stories. So that's one. I love Grant Cardone. Sell or Be Sold. I've read recently. 10X. Mel Robbins. I've read a lot of those personal development ones too recently that people might have heard of.
We're going to switch over to our hot seat questions. And being a Philly girl, I know some of these will be interesting, but the only request we have of you is the same we have of everybody else, is you just spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Last meal. You can pick absolutely anything. What do you pick?
Oh, last meal. All right. I think I'm probably going to go with, we have a Blackstone here. So we make cheesesteaks at home sometimes. And when I say we, I'm talking about my husband. He's a better cook than I am. So I would love for him to make that on our Blackstone and just chill here, eating it on our deck.
Favorite smell?
Oh, the ocean when I get to go down the Jersey Shore.
Favorite sport?
Basketball to play, football to watch.
Favorite team?
Favorite team? Well, I'm a Nittany Lion, so I'm going to go with Penn State for football.
Okay, that was better. I thought you were going to say one of the other teams.
Okay.
Favorite movie?
You know what? I love a lot of different movies, but I think Jerry Maguire. I love Jerry Maguire, and I connected with the scene, when he quit, Who's Coming With Me? Free Fallen comes on, and I rock out to that. So I especially now, my new journey. So I'm going to go Jerry Maguire.
All-time favorite book?
I'm going to go totally rogue here. My son and I wrote a book together that we didn't even really publish. We kind of did and sent it to his class during pandemic. It's called Beautiful Brain. And it was like self-publishing through Amazon. And I just loved doing that with him. And it talked about his journey a little bit. It's a kid's book. So I'm gonna go with that one because I don't know if I could pick one that I've read.
That's awesome. What's your favorite app you use on your phone?
First one popping into my brain, you said, right? So I'm going to go with Life 360. I track my kids.
Okay.
And I need to know where they are because sometimes I don't know when track practice is over. And I'm like, is the bus close? Where are we at? So
do you have an all-time favorite quote?
The quote is, what if I fail, but oh, darling, what if you fly? And I'm drawing a blank on the woman who said it. I don't think she's very well known, but I like that one.
What's that song, no matter whenever you hear it, morning, afternoon, or evening, you automatically turn it up and just rock out to it?
So I listen to songs all the time. Right before we jumped on this podcast, I had Eye of the Tiger on. So I'm going to go with that one. I'm from Philly too, so that's very cliche, but I love songs in my head. When I was a coach, now in my work, I have like theme songs that I play as I do what I do.
I love that. It's a great song. And wanted to ask you if there are one or two people out on social media that you follow that put out inspiring or motivational stuff that maybe you'd like to introduce or possibly reintroduce to our listeners.
Dean Fisher on LinkedIn is an event planner who I randomly connected with when I was on a different podcast. I love what he's putting out there just in the event space and sharing some different things about goals and manifesting. He also went above and beyond and said, I want to jump on a call with you. We connected in a couple different ways about podcasting. So he's awesome. He's on LinkedIn. And Inside Out is this company that does journals. And I have a journal from them that I am doing. I believe it's Inside Out. That is the name of it. So they put some content out related to journaling and things like that. And I like what they're doing.
I love that. And what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, follow you, or anybody that would like to talk to you about either speaking or coaching?
Sure. So the best way to get in touch with me would be to hop over to my website, shop.danunow.com. Danu is my company. I named it after a goddess. And Instagram is Kate_McCauley_XO. Sure, it'll be in the show notes. You can click on that. If we do connect, I always like people to tell me where, you might have found me from, because if, you heard this podcast, we probably align in a lot of different ways.
And then last question we have, same question we ask everybody, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
What you focus on becomes your reality. Choose wisely.
What you focus on becomes your reality. I could not agree more. I think that's a fantastic way to conclude today's episode. So I just want to thank you for jumping on here. And for our listeners, if you're looking for some follow-up, definitely connect with Kate. She's got some awesome stuff. And if you're looking to retrain your brain, it's never too late to do that. Kate, I appreciate you, and I know that we will connect again soon.
Thank you so much. Love chatting.
Thank you for listening to episode number 478. From retraining your brain and looking at failure as a research, Kate shared some powerful stuff with us today. As we conclude today's episode, I have a very simple question for you. When are you going to bet on yourself? Now, I know what you might be thinking. What if you bet on yourself and you fall short? But what if you bet on yourself and you win big? I believe in you, and it's time that you believed in yourself as well. And remember, we rise by lifting others up.
And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.